So hi everyone, and thank you very much for watching or listening today. Liam Hartery here with another episode of Presenting Champions, and today I'm joined by bare knuckle boxing legend and unlicensed boxing legend Billy Hawthorn, who is going to be talking us through the journey of his life and career in some of the toughest sports on earth, particularly bare knuckle boxing. Recently competed in BKFC, but going back through the eras, he's competed for BKB. He's really been around bare knuckle boxing since the early days of the sport when it was nowhere near as big as it is now, and he's seen the growth. As always, we're not only going to be talking about fights and sports, we're going to be talking a little bit about Billy's life as well, outside of the ring a little bit. So stay tuned, everyone. And Champ, just a big thank you once again, mate, for coming on. It's awesome to have you on the show.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
No worries at all. So, okay, so let's get into it from. I'm going to start with the big FC thing and just talk about that story because obviously it's just happened and people want to hear about it. And then from there, we can go back and look at some of your previous. Yeah, share with us anything you'd like to share about the recent BKFC fight. I mean, it's not long ago at the time of this interview. Um, I don't want to start on too much of a low point, but I still think it's a great achievement getting on. Obviously, they're pretty much the biggest show out there. So, what are your thoughts on the fight with them to start off with?
Oh, my obviously was the Wednesday before the show. I was actually laying in bed. I got a phone call off Andrew Bakewell. He says, we need an opponent for this bloke. Do you know anyone or do you fancy it yourself? I mean, I haven't trained for over a year. I retired December last year. And when I got that offer, I thought, it's just another fight in it. So I thought I'll be all right. So I had to drive down to Stockport and everything on Thursday, get bloods done and that. All the way and stuff on the Friday. Obviously, I got in the circle with the Leon Lee Brown, he was called. Really tall lad. Didn't look as tall as he actually was until I was stood in front of him in the ring. Turned out he was 6'5", arms twice the length of me, I think. But he beat us, stopped us in the second round. But it was a good experience, to be honest, like in a circle instead of the actual like a ring, square ring. But like I say, it was different rules to the other stuff I'm used to. Like you're allowed to clinch with one arm and continuously strike. Another rule is like if you've got your opponent on the ring ropes and you hammer on them, the referee won't jump in and stop the fight until they're either knocked out or till them touch the floor, which I thought was really strange. But like I say, it was exciting being in there, even though I got beat. It was just an experience. But I've spoke to Andrew Bakewell since, and I'm going to start training again. I'm going to have another go. I think this is around June time.
Ah, there we go. That's great news. I mean, I was going to ask you that because obviously a lot of people, myself included, were very excited to see you back. So the fact you're continuing the journey is fantastic news. Talk to us a little bit about your goals, like because obviously you were retired, you came out of retirement, you've obviously got the fire in your belly again a little bit. So in an ideal world, what are your aims, say for like you say about coming back in June, but if you give it like the next year or something like that, what are you sort of aiming for? What's inspiring you at the minute?
I don't think I'm really aiming for anything. I think it's just I've sat out for over a year now, and I think I'm just more boredom than anything. Bored of not being like I've been going to shows and watching other people fight and thinking like I could have been in doing it and selling that. And I think it's when I retired, I thought I had nothing left to do with it. I thought I don't need to fight no more. But now I think it's not the point of needing to fight; it's the fact I want to. So like it gives us something to look forward to. So starting the gym and all that again, it'll give us something to do during the day. And then if I fight, then obviously I'll be fit for them this time and hopefully have a better fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I say, honestly, I really do mean it. It is great to see you back and everything, and coming back on your own terms as well. I mean, that's not a question. It's just great for fight fans everywhere. I've just been honest with saying that. So, cool. Okay, well, let's go back in time a little bit, and talk about your journey because it's a long journey through the fight game. And really, I don't always do it this way, but I'm actually going to go back to the beginning with you and talk about your early days fighting. Obviously, I want to talk about BKFC because it's just happened and people want to know about it. But going back in time a bit now, when you first started fighting, and obviously I know you've done a bit with the boxing, you do a bit with obviously the bare knuckle boxing. Initially, where did you start? Where did the journey begin for you?
I started boxing when I was 8-year-old, training, and obviously as an amateur you weren't allowed to fight till you were 11 years old. So I had my first fight when I was 11. I got beat on it. I went on to do amateur for quite a few years. First 5 amateur I was beat, then I started winning. I think my last amateur fight I was 17, and then I quit amateurs after that. And then that's when white collar started coming about. So I had I think it was maybe 6 months out of the gym. I think because when I was younger, I trained every day. My dad took us training every day. Sundays I would run. I used to train over in Stanley with an old man called Terry Coulson. He was a travelling man. He was like a really good coach, very strict coach as well. So every Sunday we were over there at 10 o'clock, running from Chester Lee Street back up to Stanley, which was worked out at about 5 to 6 miles. But after that, like I say, I stopped when I was 17, had a bit of time out. Then I got involved with unlicensed stuff.
And you went from there. Okay, that's cool. I mean, like I say, some people will know this, but some people won't. So it's good to get the background because you've achieved a lot, and it's good to get started. So yeah, talk to us about those early days in the white collar or the unlicensed scene and everything like that. Because you've had some good success in the white collar scene. But when you first got into it, did you think you were going to be doing it for a long time, or was it just sort of to try it out and see where it went type of thing? If you get what I mean.
Yeah, like I say, I started when I still had my first one on. I think I was 18. And, I fought a kid who was quite a bit more experienced than me, beat us on points. And then after that, I fought another kid who ended up being my teammate called Chad Parrish. I started training with him after that fight. He beat us as well. But then I started training out of a gym called for Jimmy Johnson. And, I think I was there for a good couple of years, maybe 3 years. And I won quite a few fights. I lost a couple still, but when I left his gym, I was the FFC champion, which is a Fight Fest. I won that. Then I ended up stopping him again because I got myself a new girlfriend. Said she didn't want us to do it, so I ended up stopping. But then after that, I got back into it whilst I was with her, but I'd done it just for the money then. I'm not proud to say it now. Like I regret doing it, but I was taking fights on a weekend, going in to getting beat just for the money. I had quite a few like that. But then when I split up with her, I had my first child with her. But then I split up with her and I started doing the boxing properly again, got back in with the Jimmy Johnson training, and took us back onto the road where I was now. Started knocking people out again and winning the fights.
Yeah, that's the way. And obviously, you mentioned about some fights like just for the money and things like that, and that's sort of a low point. But looking at it on a high point, what out of your like the white collar boxing, what would you say is your proudest moment of that? I mean, is it winning the title, or it'd just be good to get your thoughts on like some of your favorite fights, basically? Because we'll get to the bare knuckle now in a minute, but obviously, I have to touch on the white collar as well, you know.
And one of my favourite unlicensed one was I'd been like I say, I'd been taking fights for money for quite a bit. And then I got asked to fight this kid called Brian McMahon. And it turned out it was one of Mick Terrell's lads. And I knocked him out in the first round, but everyone was shocked, and I was shocked myself because he was a big old unit, like he was big muscle bound. And even Mick Terrell and all that was shocked. And I think that's one of the good points when I come back from taking the fights for the money. Beating like one of Mick Terrell's lads, because Mick Terrell was one of the best trainers around and still is now. And like I said, I was buzzing that I'd done that. And then obviously after that, I started winning titles and all that again. I think all in the end, I ended up with 6 titles in the unlicensed game. And then after that, I moved into the bare knuckle.
Yeah. Well, some amazing achievements there, I've got to be honest. Amazing achievements. Shout out to Mick Terrell as well.
Definitely, he's brilliant.
Yeah, he's a legend. He's been on this show as well, and obviously amazing win on the same show as you, the BKFC show. So awesome stuff. Yeah, let's talk about the bare knuckle from the beginning. I mean, basically, I'm always curious to ask people this: how you first found out about it, and what inspired you to do it, basically, and to switch from the gloved to obviously the bare knuckle bone against bone. How did that first come about, basically?
Obviously, I've knew Jimmy McCorry for years since I was an amateur, and then into the unlicensed, I knew him as well. I seen him starting to do it with like Dave Radford and all that. Seen them fights and that, and I thought, oh, I fancy a go at it. I messaged Jimmy not to put us on the way. He put us on the show in Newcastle. The company was called UB Bad at the time. No, sorry, it wasn't. It was called Be Bad. Jim Freeman, Joe Brown had took over it at this point. So I ended up fighting on that show against a man called Cliff Hartery, who was meant to be a really experienced fighter on it. But I won that by second round knockout, I think. After that, just went from there.
Yeah, amazing. Well, shout out to Jimmy McCrory as well. As another legend.
Definitely.
Game, a great guy as well, got Heart of Gold. He's also been on this show. So that's amazing. So obviously, one of the things I'd like to talk about here is how bare knuckle boxing has grown, because this might seem obvious to you in a way, but you've been around it for longer than some people, obviously. I mean, there are some other people who've been around it a long time as well, but you've kind of seen the growth of the sport from the early days where it was like very fringe, bit like barely legal type of thing, to now where it's pretty much a mainstream sport and it's getting bigger. So it's sort of a big question, but what are some of your thoughts on like how the sport has grown and improved and everything since you started in bare knuckle boxing to now, if you get what I mean? Because it must have changed a lot, right?
Oh, it's changed quite a bit. I mean, my first bare knuckle fight was meant to be in hay bales, but then it obviously got turned into the ring by Jim and Jonah, which I thought was better. Don't get us wrong, I still fancy going the bales, but I just don't want to do it for a company that I don't like, particularly I know I like, if you know what I mean. But bare knuckle, it's come from the first show what I done, which was at the NA 6 feet in Walker, to then I've boxed at the Liverpool Echo Arena. Then they've went into like the O2 Indigo. But like that one last week at the BKFC at the Walker Dome, I've never seen a show sell out like that before. I know Eddie Hearn's done shows there. He hasn't sold it out, but like I think BKFC could have sold it out 3-4 times over easy. So I think it's just coming on leaps and bounds. Really, it's only going to get bigger in this.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's big now, but it's just going to get bigger and bigger from here. Now, I asked you earlier about like your favorite fights with the unlicensed white collar side of things or whatever. Same type of thing with bare knuckle boxing, because obviously you've been in there against some of the best guys and everything, and obviously you're a legend of the game yourself. And I mean that I'm not blowing any smoke or anything. I mean it's just a fact, But obviously you've been in there against the best guys as well. What are some of your proudest moments, or your favorite fights or whatever, the highlights in your mind from BKB and from your journey in that sport?
So I think my favourite one was when I knocked J-Dog out.
Oh,
We had the double knockdown, and I got up and knocked him out. That was basically just because he'd beat us twice before with gloves on. And obviously he wanted to fight Ferry, but he had to fight me first. But obviously, like I say, that was one of my best moments. And I think my actual best one is Jamie Hearn, when I knocked Jamie Hearn out. I think everyone who goes to bare knuckle and that will agree with that. Them all loved it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, amazing win. And it's always good to get your thoughts on that. Toughest fights is another one, because obviously, this is a sort of a fan favorite question, if you get what I mean. It comes up every interview I do, pretty much. Bare knuckle boxing is a very, very tough sport, so I think a lot of fights are tough. But when it comes to like your toughest fights, and this doesn't always have to be somebody who hits the hardest either. It can also be like somebody who's technically good, or if there was something going on in your life, say outside the ring, that made the fight tougher or whatever, but you overcame that. You know what I mean? It takes different forms. But what would you say, which ones stand out for you as being like the toughest fights?
I think one of my toughest fights, like not because of his like power or nothing like that, it's like you see outside of the ring, was Adam Downey. Because Wales, Adam Downey, run up to the fight with Adam Downey, my coach who used to train us at the time, Malpia, he was really bad with cancer and all that. And obviously it was a hard time, not just for me, his full family, not, you know what I mean? But then obviously I got dropped in the first round with Downey. And then the bell went, I went back to the corner, and Mal's brother was in the corner. And obviously they were telling us what to do and saying, come on, you need to do this for Mal and that. And obviously I went out and I won, I knocked down the out. But I've got to say, like, mentally, that's got to be one of the toughest fights I've had.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's often the way. I mean, with family outside, can just knock your head off track. But made them proud by the sound of it. On the subject of family, though, I mean, what is the situation with, like, especially doing something as tough as bare knuckle boxing, like with your loved ones, if you don't mind me asking? It's not to sort of get into anyone's personal life, but I'm just curious how they feel about it, like if they watch you fight or if they don't like it, or what the situation is, if you don't mind me asking, with like your loved ones and that,
Yeah, like I say, obviously I've boxed since I was a young lad. My mum, she come to me first ever fight when I was 11. Obviously I got chin, so she said she was never coming again. So then I think it was my 10th amateur fight. She come, I won. She still cried, said she wasn't coming back again. She never did. She never come back to any of my fights until I was 24. She come back to that one. I think that was just because it was like I was fighting local from the same area as well. And he was an ex-professional and all that. Really good bloke, like Phil Reid, a really good man, nice man. But I think she come to that because it was like a local fight between the two of her. Ever since that one, she's never missed one since, really. She come to all most of me bare knuckle ones, like when I won my world title and all that, she come. But my wife's the same. She didn't think she would like it at first when I first got with her. But then as soon as she started coming, she got the bug for it as well, liked coming every time, screaming her head off as always. But my family are really supportive of it. Like, I've got 2 sisters and a brother. My brother does a little bit as well, not as much as me, but he's done a bit. But they all support us as much as they can. My dad as well. My dad used to be my coach when I was younger. He used to coach us for my fights and all that. But my dad's one of my biggest supporters as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really good that they're behind you, because as you know from lads in the gym or whatever, I mean, it does vary a bit. Like, some people's families, they're behind them a lot. Some people's families, they don't like it, but they do it anyway. So it's good you have that support behind you and everything like that. That is good news. The other thing, obviously, with bare knuckle boxing, I mean, must get a lot of exposure from the sport and everything, and people in your local area. I'm sure they all know you and things like that. But I mean, basically, when you're out and about, what is like the response you get, like being recognized as a fighter and being stopped for pictures and all that type of stuff? How does that work for you? Because obviously, like we were saying earlier, with bare knuckle boxing getting bigger and bigger, there's sort of more and more exposure with the sport. So, what's the situation for you, like getting stopped and like stopped in the street, or I mean, how does that side of things work? If you get
I
what I'm.
mean, when I first started doing the bare knuckle and all that, it started going mainstream, and I'd won my world title against Craig Amer, and I was getting stopped quite a bit. Like, my wife used to get annoyed because I would go shopping and people would recognise us. I mean, still now people still stop and speak to us and all that, or they'll look at us and they'll take a second look and say, "Oh, it's you. You used to do the fighting on YouTube and all that." So I mean, it still happens now, but not as much. But I'm glad about because I can actually get about. But no, it was all right. Yeah, like you say, I was recognised quite a bit, but it started dying. It's died down now because I'm not involved in it as much and all that. So
Yeah, it makes sense. But still, I mean, it's good to get recognized for your achievements. On the subject of achievements in bare knuckle boxing, obviously, you touched on the world title a couple of times there, and I should have asked this sooner, actually. But we're getting to it now. I mean, your memories from um, winning that. I mean, I just do have like a really narrow question about this particular round or this particular thing, but just your experiences of being world champion and sort of how it felt and what goes through your mind in a moment like that. I mean, that's something to touch on. Anything you'd like to share, really, about like what it means
I
to you.
mean, when I got told I was fighting for, I was absolutely over the moon because obviously I'd had, I think it was 7 or 8 fights where I'd been unbeaten and that, and then they give us obviously Michael Ferry was the heavyweight champion, but he was also my training partner, so like we couldn't fight each other. So then I had to move down to cruiserweight, which is where I ended up matched with Craig Amer. When I beat Craig, I knocked him out as well. And I actually felt a little bit bad when I knocked him out, like, because I liked him, he was a nice bloke. So I felt a bit bad when I knocked him out, but then when I knew he was all right, the thought of winning the world title was just brilliant. Like, my family were there, my mum, dad, my wife, and all that. And I had my sponsor as well at the time, Mark Bailey. He was like a brilliant bloke, done anything for us. got us anything I needed for me fighter and all that. But even him and his family were there. We all travelled down to Nottingham to come and watch us and support us. So it was a really good feeling, like getting out the ring, everyone being there for us.
Well, it's a special achievement, and it's obviously, your place in history and everything is amazing. So glad we got to touch on that. We also touched earlier on your a little bit of your training and sort of what's going on there. One thing I am curious about, I don't think people talk about enough, is you've got to be mentally tough to do this as well, like to do what you do. Do you know what I mean? And well, obviously you know what I mean better than I do. But in that sense, when you've got a big fight coming up, what is going through your head? Do you? I know you've been doing this since you're very young, so you're obviously used to it in that sense. But I still think that, like, with something as tough as bare knuckle boxing, do you feel like the adrenaline and things before? Do you have to keep yourself calm? Do you just get excited about it? Like, what's the range of emotions you're feeling on the build up to a big fight?
I mean, there's mixed emotions, obviously, when you're training and all that, because sometimes I enjoy training, but there's other times where I just don't want to do it, and I used to just not go, which is probably one of my biggest downfalls, is if I can't be bothered, I'll just not go, which is where I used to enjoy training with my old coach, Keith Pearce. Used to force us, used to actually come drive to my house and get us out of the house and make us go. Same with like Sim McTrell and all that, when I used to train with them. Bungle used to make us do the training I had to do. They used to do a circuit called the ton. It was horrible. It is horrible, and like they used to make you do it to get you fit for your fight, which is, I think, is what I need. I've got to have someone there to make us do it, because now I'm just too lazy, to be honest. But I mean, I'll hit the bags and all that. Bag work, pad works, I love. But sparring, I love sparring. But it's just the other bits of training, like your cardio, your running, stuff like that. I can't stand it. Hate it.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. I mean, it is grueling, so I get where you're coming from. But yeah, I mean, people train different ways, so having someone there to help you, I mean, that works for you. That is sound. On the subject of training, because we move into the last couple of things now, anyway, because we've talked about a fair bit. Obviously, there's some great coaches out there that people can go to, but at the same time, you've achieved a lot in your career. So I'd be curious if you have any advice for like young fighters or for people who are, want to get into boxing or bare knuckle boxing. They want to achieve something in that. Like I say, I know there's some great gyms people can go to, but especially because you've been around it from a young age, you've been around bare knuckle from, well, pretty much from the beginning and whatever. What would you say if someone comes up to you and they say, "Oh, I want to do something in this sport"? Like, if any advice for them?
I mean, obviously, I tell them you need to train, because like if you don't train, look what happened to me on Saturday. I didn't train for that fight. I mean, I wasn't meant to be fighting, so obviously I had no training. I'm not just saying it was me training that let us down, because like I say, I couldn't get anywhere near the lad, and he had too long for reaching that. But I'd definitely say you've got to train. You've got to train and have a good coach around you, I think.
Well, that's it. It is important. I mean, because what they say, they say train hard, fight easy, and all that. Not that the fights are easy, but at the same time, they train hard and make it a lot easier. So, yes, it's good advice, absolutely good advice. Well, moving into pretty much the last couple of things now. One of the things we've given a couple of shout outs here to a few different coaches and a few different people that have helped you. I like to give a shout out to people who help fighters behind the scenes because, like, obviously who they are and they know what they do. But from people watching the fights and people from the outside looking in, there's a lot of good people behind the scenes helping fighters, if you get what I mean. I like to give them a mention. So, with you, is there anyone else you'd like to give a shout out to, whether it's coaches, sponsors, mates of yours who help you? I mean, it doesn't matter who it is, but anyone that you'd like to mention at all.
Yeah, like I say, I used to train with Jimmy Johnson, who were a really good team. Them helped us quite a bit. Then I moved over into Wall's End Gym, called Reps Gym. That was run by a man called Andy Weil, who also helped out. And then Keith and Mark Pearce, them were brilliant. Keith was, like I say, Keith used to come to my house, drag us out, make us train, make us run. Same with another coach called John Sears, little John Sears. Was a brilliant man, brilliant coach as well. Then after them, I moved up to, like I say, Mick Terrell's gym, the Manor. Obviously, I had Mick Terrell, Bungle, who's called Andrew Davison, Baz Jones, Sean Barry and all that. Them all brilliant coaches used to make us train as well. And then my sponsor at the time was Mark Bailey, runs a computer clinic. Brilliant bloke. His family's a brilliant family. Always there for us when I needed them. Got us every help that I needed. Just always at me fights. Never missed a fight. Just all of them. And then like my family. My family's my biggest support ever. My wife, my mum, dad, my sister, brothers, and my 2 kids.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, it's great to give them a mention because obviously in your life, in your circle, they obviously, you all know each other, but on a wider picture of things, it's good to give them a mention because they're sort of behind the scenes and everything. Well, Champ, we've talked about some real good stuff here. I mean, I think we've touched on it like a nice mix of the highs and lows. And I gotta say, I mean, it's fantastic to see you back. And like I said at the beginning, and we're looking forward to the future, myself and fight fans everywhere. But last thing for me to do is just say once again, thank you for your time and thank you for fitting this in and everything.
No problem. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel and there'll be more videos coming soon.